Hello, in today's class, very quickly, we are going to discuss the Ethics 2025 paper, and I will be currently taking section A. Let's see question number 1A. In the present digital age, social media has revolutionized our way of communication and interaction. So this you have seen in usage of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Okay, so although it has led to dissipation of information at a very faster pace, it has led to accessibility and availability of the information. You can say democratization of the information at a very grassroots level, but it has raised certain ethical issues and challenges. So these ethical challenges you have to discuss over here. So first one over here is freedom of expression versus the hate speech. Now understand that under Article 19 of the Indian Constitution, right, government provides for freedom of expression to the individual, but it is a restrictive right. Okay. Now, in name of freedom of expression, you can't go on abusing or talking bad things about certain community or religion. This we have seen in a lot of cases. You must be studying in newspaper, the hate speech, right? The cow vigilantism, the mob lynching, which has been happening, right? So example over here is spread of communal misinformation during the Delhi riots 2020. Now, the ethical thinker over here will be John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill is a consequentialist. Okay, he says that there are self-harming actions, there are others harming actions. Okay, so self-harming, whatever you do to yourself, that is acceptable in your area. But if you are entering into the area of someone else, you can't interfere over there. Okay, so these are other harming action. So freedom is justified until and unless it harms others. Second point over here is privacy versus surveillance. We all have seen in Article 21 under Puttaswamy case 2017, Supreme Court has mentioned that right to privacy is essential part of right to life. Okay, so understand that whenever you are searching anything on Amazon, what happens? The algorithmic biases are picked up by those companies. Okay, so next time they will show you a list where your search options you have mentioned. Okay, so what happens? They are keeping a digital surveillance over you. They are collecting the user data. This we have seen in the Cambridge Analytica scandal, where Facebook data was misused for the political manipulation. So here, Kant, in his deontological perspective, he is going to say that the companies cannot merely treat the individuals or the citizens for their profit gains. Okay, so he talks here about treating the individuals as end in themselves, rather means to the end. Okay, another thing over here is individual autonomy and algorithmic manipulation. Okay, this was very essential keyword, algorithmic biases or algorithmic manipulation. So algorithms, they prioritize the engagement over the truth. We have mostly seen in this, we are currently in a post-truth era, okay, where there is a lot of dissipation of information, but the information has been manipulated, right? So what do we need to overcome all these algorithmic biases or these informations or these misinformations? The correct way is to have alt news to counter the fake news, right? So here it is talking that YouTube's recommendation system amplifies the extremist content due to the algorithmic engagement, because it is benefiting all these big corporations, right? So over here, again, Amartya Sen, he mentions that real freedom requires informed choices, okay, which the manipulation undermines. When we will be discussing Amartya Sen's capabilities approach, understand he mentions that there is potentiality and there is actuality, right? Suppose I am sitting on a hunger strike, right? That is what I am doing willfully. I am willfully not eating food and I am hungry. But somebody in Syria is not able to get food because of the food crisis. Now, both scenarios are different. Both the people are hungry, right? One is willingly not doing and one is not getting that opportunity. to eat the food, right? So this is what he is trying to discuss over here, that real freedom, it requires the informed choices. It will be a choice to reject, right? This is what he's telling. Another key point over here is transparency versus profit motive. Profit motive of the these organizations while they want their algorithm to keep on going. So Twitter X controversies over disinformation and lack of transparent moderation policies. These transparent moderation policies we have mostly seen after Elon Musk taking over Twitter. Okay, what happens that utilitarianists will argue that greatest good should be greatest for the greatest number of people. It is often sacrificed over here by these profit motives of the cooperations. Another point we can see here is global connectivity versus cultural relativism. Now understand that currently we are in a globalized, interconnected world, right? One culture difference has a different view from another culture or religion. For example, somewhere idol worship will be acceptable, somewhere it will not be acceptable. So what happened a few time back, it was an artist, Charlie Hebdo, who drew the cartoons, and it sparked the global debates on freedom versus the respect towards religion, right? It sparked the debate on social media. Another thing over here is empowerment versus the mental health concern. Even WHO has mentioned that those people who keep on scrolling, they get this addictive tendencies to use a lot of cell phone, and that is somewhere hampering your intellectual development. The rising cases of depression among the adolescents are linked to Instagram users. I'm not getting likes, I'm not getting subscriber. People are living in such kind of virtual world. Okay, another ethical dilemma which we see here is anonymity versus accountability. Now, for any kind of cybercrime which is happening on social media, whom are you going to make responsible, right? Whatever IP address or secrecy that is maintained, we are never going to discover that. For example, a few time back, there was some fundamental extremist. They were using the Telegram channel. They operate through all these things, right? So there is a lack of accountability. Cyber harassment and deep fake scandals, right? This is another issue. So what is essential legally? Yes, DPDP Act we have. Okay, this is in the process. Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Apart from that, we need some kind of individual regulators. Also, we need AI-driven fact-checking. And also, the algorithm has to be ethically designed. Now, this is a question. How can you design a machine ethically, right? Another thing over here is digital literacy has to be uh, passed on to the grassroots level. And yes, the public officials and influencers, they must model ethical online behavior. I hope so many points are clear. Let's quickly go to our second question over here. This all we have always studied in polity, constitutional morality. It was these are the constitutional values which have been emphasized more by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. For example, equality, fraternity, liberty, tolerance, compassion. Okay, so it is written that constitutional morality is not a natural sentiment, but a product of civil education and adherence to the rule of law. Yes, so first you define this word, what is constitutional morality, and then examine the significance of it for the public servant, highlighting the role in promoting good governance and accountability in the public administration. First of all, I have discussed that liberty, justice, equality, fraternity, rule of law, right? So it helps in guiding the ethical decision making. What happened in Navtej Singh Johar case? Let's take this classic example. 2018, Supreme Court has decriminalized homosexuality under Section 377 of Indian Penal Code. Why? Because it was a thing of Victorian morality era, right? But now everything is driven by constitutional morality. Now, balancing rule of law with discretion, right? We have seen that in Vishaka state, Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan, 1997, there have been Vishaka guidelines for sexual harassment of women at workplaces. Okay, so here we have seen that judiciary came to rescue. Okay, so what happened that it was a discretionary usage of judicial power, but it was grounded in the constitutional principle of protecting women's fundamental right to dignity. Is it clear? Now you see, safeguarding the rights and the justice. So what happened? There's an IS officer in Manipur, Armstrong Payne. He built 100 kilometers road, okay, and he mobilized the resources to build this. Now this reflects the fraternity and the empathy and the conception of social justice in the bureaucrat. Is it clear? Another key point over here is that promoting good governance. Now, how can you promote good governance? Suppose in your district, there's this affirmative policy, right? Affirmative actions means the reservation systems, okay, which are provided to the marginalized, weaker, and the vulnerable sections. So the implementation of such quotas or the reservation is done pretty fairly. That will lead to good governance of equity and justice. Apart from this, ensuring accountability in public administration. This we have seen that whistleblowers like Ashok Kemka, right? He had, despite multiple transfers, he has very quickly brought into light about the scandals of various land mafias. So he embodied the fidelity to the constitutional morality of being an honest official, of bringing the justice to the society. Yes, the way forward you can always mention civil service training. We have government has recently launched Mission Karma Yogi, the capacity building program, right? And apart from this, there are certain institutional mechanisms. Let's very quickly come to the next question. Karl von Clausewitz once said, war is a diplomacy by other means. Okay, now understand that this question has to be critically analyzed in the present context of contemporary geopolitical conflict. So what is happening? You have to address in this question Russia and Ukraine. Yes, you have to address whatever is happening in the Gaza Strip, Israel, Iran, Israel, Iraq, right? All these things, Syria, you have to address these parts. So understand, first critically analyze in such questions. Certain points you address it positively and then you do a major part of your answer, 70% in a critical analysis. First of all, strategic continuity of the state policy. What it says that Ukraine and Russia conflict over here, Russia had justified its military action, mentioning that they had multiple failed talks with NATO. Okay. In fact, US invasion of Iraq, it was framed as protecting the national security interest. Also, India and Pakistan Kargil conflict, you have seen that military action had reinforced India's diplomatic position globally. Address this part in approximately 40 to 50 words. But this is the main answer which we have to write. Ethical critique. First of all, humanitarian cost and ethical versus the ethical diplomacy. We have seen in Syria's civil war, it led to multiple deaths and refugees. It undermined the dignity and the moral legitimacy. So over here, the theory of just war is given, like how much, to what extent or degree you have to go to war. This was given by Aquinas. Now, it is said that war as a failed diplomacy. War today highlights the failure of dialogue, nor its extension. Instead, we should more focus on the Ahimsa principle of Mahatma Gandhi. More dialogues, more conversations. Okay. Global interdependence. So, now economy is everything, right? You understand. And all the economy of the world is interlinked. So, whatever happened during the Ukraine war, it triggered global food and energy crisis. So, it is not a good way of diplomacy. Rise of international norms and institutions. We have seen that Iran nuclear deal, it achieved the diplomatic success without war, although now US has currently rejected it. Okay. Also, Technological and ethical challenges. What about the cyber warfare? What about the drones, right? Which you can't foresee. So I hope that you understand this question. In 21st century, war is less an extension of diplomacy, but it is more of a failure. What is required over here is ethical governance, global cooperation, adherence to international law, and war has to be the last resort, not an alternative form of negotiation. Instead, it should be dialogues, right? So over here, you can quote any of the thinker. Whenever you're writing any ethics answer, you have to give a human touch to it. So you can say Mahatma Gandhi has said that an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind, right? So more focus should be on dialogues and cooperation. Very quickly, let's see the second A. Keeping the national security in mind, examine the ethical dilemmas related to the controversies of environmental clearances of development project in ecologically sensitive border areas of the country. Recently, we have seen the Dharali floods of Uttarakhand, right? Please, in your answers, try to include the recent current affairs. Now, this question, you have to very quickly see that it is talking about the applied part of ethics. There are 4 dimensions of ethics: the meta ethics, the descriptive ethics, the prescriptive ethics, and the applied form of ethics. So this is from environmental ethics, and the debate over here is regarding development versus environment. Okay, so in this question, first of all, you do have to mention about sustainable development. Let's very quickly see here. National security versus environmental sustainability. Before this, you can always mention that the development has to be such that it has to be a balance between ecology and development. So you can say sustainable development is the need of the hour over here, where you are not just doing things for the current generation, but there is an intergenerational equity for your future generations. Very quickly, the keyword has to be addressed over here. So what happened over here in Char Dham highway project? Uttarakhand, it faced criticism for destabilizing the fragile Himalayan slopes, right? That's a earthquake prone, landslide prone area. But it justified it for the troop movement near the China border. Another thing over here, short-term strategic needs versus long-term ecological cost. For example, you want to make hydropower project in Arunachal Pradesh to provide electricity for the people, okay? But long term, what you are doing, you are disrupting the riverine ecosystem, right? Now, rule of law versus expediency. Supreme Court has very essentially mentioned that environment impact assessment has to be done. There has to be a public hearing, okay? But are we really following that rule of law? Now, this is raising the question of the procedural ethics. It is just to bypass such safeguards. Okay, another thing, right of local communities versus the collective national interest. Should the local rights be sacrificed for larger national security? This we have seen that in Ladakh, there is a Changpa, okay, nomads, okay, they live in Changthang, they are into sheep rearing, they do this transhumane and all. So the kind of road and defense project which are being there, it is degrading their grazing grounds for the animals. So it is affecting the life of the people. Developmentalism versus precautionary principles. So yes, I was talking about this Dharali cloudburst recently. It has triggered the flash flood. So what was happening, that lot of developmental hotels for tourism were made in the mouth of the Himalayas. Okay, this is the place. Somewhere here, it was a ecologically sensitive, fragile area. There were a lot of movement of the vehicles, despite telling of government that this is ESA area. But what happened? It triggered the flash flood and landslides. Cloudburst was natural, but what happened after that was because of developmental growth which was happening in the ecologically sensitive area. So this you had to address in your exam, the recent current affairs. Now, whenever we are dealing with ethical part of environment, we always remember Aldo Leopold. He talks about the land ethics. He said that humans are a part of community with the nature, not the masters over it, right? So you have to live in harmony with the nature over here. So sustainable development, yes, this keyword had to be mentioned in the answer, right? Now, very quickly, let's see. I hope you are able to understand that where and how you have to hit the question. Okay, so it's 150 marker. You don't have to go on and on telling the stories. First of all, there has to be an ethical thinker. This is not a general studies answer. Understand? You have to substantiate your answer either by your utilitarianist approach, either by deontological approach, constitutional morality. All the keywords are in your syllabus. Okay, now I think this was simple. Huh? Those who in trouble, untrouble are, will trouble itself. Okay, this, I think this was in one of the South Indian movie. So it means that the people who are very calm and composed during the time of adversity, कोई मुसीबत आ गई और मैं एकदम घबरा गई, right? No, I know this shall pass too. Very cool and calm mind if I have, then I can deal very easily with the situation. Now, as a bureaucrat, apply it there. As a bureaucrat, when you go into a district, lot of complaints and a lot of troubles are going to come. What is more essential? To have a very calm mind, okay? To have equanimity. Individuals who remain calm and composed during the crisis, they overcome the challenges. So it is talking about a bureaucrat who needs to have a very high emotional intelligence. We have discussed in one of the lectures that Daniel Goleman has mentioned that emotional intelligence is when you know your emotion, when you know thyself, right? Self-knowledge, self-regulation, internal motivation, empathy, and social skills. Only a bureaucrat or a person who has very high emotional intelligence can survive the situation. So how you're going to apply, you don't have to go and explaining, you have to always supplement. Understand, this is a ethics paper of not philosophy, but it is an ethics paper of your government civil services exam. So examples have to be picked up from there. So crisis in resilience in the crisis management. It leads to rational decision making instead of impulsive decisions, right? In 2013 Uttarakhand floods, we have seen that calm leadership by the rescue officials, it helped save thousands of lives despite the overwhelming challenges. Second point over here is ethical leadership and public service. So it was E. Sridharan, who is also known as the Metro Man. Despite a lot of bureaucratic hurdles, despite a lot of political pressure, he led to the completion of Delhi Metro Rail cooperation. Okay. Another thing, moral courage and psychological strength. So Nelson Mandela, he was in jail for 27 years in South Africa, okay, for protesting for apartheid. This movement was going on. But once he came out, he had that fortitude. He remained calm and he formed the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And this led to development of democratic government, okay? And he focused more on education, right? Because education is one weapon with which you can fight all the odds. And today, South Africa is one of the most developed nations in whole Africa. So what Aristotle talks about here is about the golden mean, right? Or you can say Madhyam Marg of Buddha. You don't have to be a coward and you don't have to be a fool. Instead, you just have to be little courageous. If you see in the contemporary scenario during COVID-19, the officials who maintained the composure, they could coordinate better, okay, than those yielding fear or any under political pressure or rhetoric. So it is talking about calmness in adversity. Now you understand all these answers. You don't have to write stories in the thinkers. Connect it with any of the governance example. Okay. Another question. The greatest discovery of my generation is that human being can alter his life by altering his attitude. Now understand, this question was from uh, emotional intelligence. It is a part of your syllabus, so you have to address this keyword, you have to write. इसीलिए एथिक्स के पेपर में एथिक्स का सिलेबस याद होना बहुत जरूरी है, बिकॉज दैट टाइम यू आर इन सो मच ऑफ एग्जाम प्रेशर दैट यू विल फॉरगेट व्हाट टू राइट. इफ यू just put the syllabus, if you know the keywords of the syllabus, you know okay, from which part the question is being asked. Very balanced paper they have asked. Like here, the question is from the attitude. We have discussed in one of the class ABC model. Okay, so he says that attitude is the foundation of the character. We have seen that first over here is your belief system, okay, then is your value system, then is your attitude, and then it is followed up by the behavioral external change. So what is this belief? I have discussed in the class. Belief is I like honesty, I value honest people, I like to be friends with the honest people, right? And then outward expression, being honest is a virtue, and I go and participate in Anna Hazare's campaign for honest corrupt-free India. Is it clear? So he is talking about that what is required that human being can alter their attitude. Again, I'll take example over here. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan was happening, right? So गवर्नमेंट्स ट्राई टू ब्रॉड द एटीट्यूडनल एंड बिहेवियरल चेंज इन द पीपल. जो लोग पहले बोलते थे खेत में लोटा लेके जाना जरूरी है, मतलब अच्छा होता है, फर्टिलाइज कर देता है, खाद बनती है, बट हाउ डिड वी ब्रॉड दैट शिफ्ट इन द belief and the environmental value system of the people? So this is what he is saying. If somebody is doing a gym and he is also smoking, so there has to be, please go and see the lecture, I've discussed various theories, there has to be positive, negative, classical conditioning, certain things, that how the person brings in the change and he moves towards more healthier lifestyle. Okay, so attitude as a foundation of character. This we have seen in Armstrong Payne. He built the People's Road in Manipur despite that there were no funds, but his attitude was very empathetic, right? Second thing, resilience and moral courage. This we have seen in Nelson Mandela. I have just discussed how forgiving attitude he had even after being in prison for 27 years. Okay, Kiran Bedi's attitude to reform in the Tihar jail. She never looked criminals with a very harsh eyes. Instead, she had this positive attitude and a strong attitude where she wanted to reform. उनके लिए छोटे छोटे उनको कारपेट बनवाना, ठीक है, a little handicrafts thing. So this is bringing self-respect, dignity, financial independence even for the person who are living inside the Tihar jail. क्या पता 100 में से 100 लोग 10 लोग का हृदय परिवर्तन हो जाए, right? So this is the attitude which is required in the bureaucrats. Psychological and ethical growth. We have seen the doctors and frontline workers who showed courage because it was in their attitude. Despite the COVID-19, it is my duty as a doctor to save the life. I hope this part is again clear. Let's very quickly see the another one, 3C. The strength of society is not in its laws, but in the morality of its people. Now, this question is from the topic conscience. There is a topic in your syllabus, law, regulation, and conscience. Okay, so laws can bound you. Okay, they are external imposition, but what is more essential? अंदर से स्वतः हृदय परिवर्तन. So this is what he is saying. Law versus morality. Law will prescribe some minimum standard of behavior, but morality will set higher ethical values. For example, despite strong anti-corruption laws, corruption persists unless the officials and the citizens, they embrace integrity and probity in the value system, right? Now, see how morality has been a social capital, how it developed what happened in Japan, there are multiple disasters. So Japan's disaster resilience rests not only on the laws. It's not just the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction that they follow. It's also the people, okay, citizens who are disciplined and they have a collective moral responsibility. Now, success of Swachh Bharat mission, it dependent not only on the rules, right? Rules are there. Suppose you are going and in a traffic light and बहुत जल्दी है and you're crossing the red traffic light. So is it that you're following the rules? No. If you are stopping, then you have a sense of civic morality, right? So that is essential, which Swami Vivekananda is saying, that it has to come from inside, not external imposition. So it was when people's moral commitment to the cleanliness increased. Okay. In the contemporary relevance, we can take another example that laws exist against the communal violence. Yes, gender discrimination, environmental restrictions, yet there are violations which are happening. So over here, John Rawls, he says in Sense of Justice that society is stable when people themselves act justly out of conviction, not compulsion. You can't have a stick around somebody. It has to come from internal, right? Any kind of morality is coming internally कि भाई corruption नहीं करना है तो नहीं करना है. It should come internally. It has to be not कि हमने Prevention of Corruption Act लगा दिया so हम फंस जाएंगे. No, your internalization of the value has to be very honest, right? So if you see this whole paper, it is actually trying to check you by the way you write the examples. Okay. Another question, for any kind of social re-engineering, by successfully implementing welfare schemes, a civil servant must use reason and critical thinking in an ethical framework. Justify the statement with suitable example. Socrates has very well said, right? Know thyself, or he has said that unexamined life is not worth living. So there is the Socratic method where you question everything, right? You reason everything. This happened, why? But this happened, then why? There must be something behind it. It cannot happen impulsively in air, right? So if you have that kind of attitude, ki when you are a civil servant and there is loopholes in the PDS system or the DBT system, right? You are questioning and thinking how this happened, then only you can find the solution, right? So what is social engineering over here? It refers to transforming the societal structure, attitude and practices for inclusive growth and justice, right? First of all, avoiding the blind implementation of scheme. I've already discussed Amartya Sen's capabilities approach, and I have discussed that it highlights enhancing the real freedom of choice, not just providing the facilities. I've given you the example of hunger strike over here and somebody who is actually hungry in Syria. Okay, so what happens in tribal areas, building schools alone is insufficient. What you have to do, you have to see that there is cultural sensitivity, local languages used and community participation is there. सर्व शिक्षा अभियान लगा दिया है, but जो दीदी खाना बनाने आ रही हैं, many of the students, they reject to eat the food in that village. This is actually a real life example. In Bihar it happened, and I think it was DM Rahul Kumar who came to rescue. So they rejected eating food. Their parents said, my children are not going to eat the food because that lady is a widow, right? So what, as a public servant, as a bureaucrat, what are you going to do? You have to be empathetic, right? You will go, you will sit and you will eat food over there. Now this is going to set a precedent for everybody ki dekho, wo gaye. So we should also send our kids. Now bureaucrats over here can be the role models. Balancing the conflicting interests. John Rawls' justice as fairness calls for prioritizing the least advantaged. Okay. So when I have discussed about John's role, differential equality, I'll just explain it again over here. He says that suppose there is a starting line of race. Okay. There is an old man. There is a pregnant lady. Okay. There is a disabled man. Okay. So can the line of starting the same for everybody. Similarly, the kind of social historical justices which have been done with various marginalized community, can they start competing from the same line? Does justice only means equality? No. So he is here talking about that you have to prioritize even the least advantaged person. Even he could be provide some affirmative action, provide some benefits so that the starting race for that person becomes different. Okay. So what happens in Manrega, the officials must balance immediate job creation, that is equity, with even the efficiency. Another thing over here in social re-engineering, first of all, curbing corruption and leakages. Now, suppose in your district, lot of DBT corruption and loopholes are there, right? So it is your imperative, I have just mentioned, that you have to identify those loopholes and you have to bring in the changes. Now, it is Jeremy Bentham over here who said the decision making has to be such that it has to be greatest good for greater number of people, even for the marginalized sections. Okay. Again, example over here, Aadhaar and DBT. Okay. How you have to remove. Ethical decision making in crisis. Yes. Laws give the structure, right? But ethical judgment ensures the justice. And this has been specifically mentioned in the Practical Wisdom of Aristotle, where he's talking about balancing the law with a moral virtue. He's giving his golden mean principle again over here. Evidence-based policy implementation. Okay, so social re-engineering, right? Survey and analytics, they enable better targeting of the schemes. So it has to be data-driven governance, usage of e-governance to bring in more transparency and accountability. Another key point you can write, ensuring equity and inclusion. We have seen in Kerala's Kudumshri program that women self-help group, they were integrated after evaluating the gender inequality, leading to financial and then ultimate empowerment of the women. Preventing the populistic policies, right? It avoids the wasteful populist schemes that provide certain token benefits. Social re-engineering, you can do that also. Social audits in Manrega, Jan Sunwai Andolan, which happened in Rajasthan as a bureaucrat, right to disclosures, right to information act, right? So yes, it is Max Weber who in public administration, you guys must have read that he talks about that civil servants are not merely cog in the wheel of machine. Rather, the civil servants must combine the rational legal authority with the ethical responsibility. So you are as a civil servant bridge between the policy and the people. Next question. What are the major teachings of Mahavira? Explain their relevance in the contemporary world. So there are these 5 teachings. First is ahimsa, non-injury to any living being. This promotes vegetarianism, animal rights. Recently, you can see the case of stray dogs in Delhi, right? Satya, truthfulness, ensures transparency and integrity. Aste, non-stealing, ethical business practices, right? Based on trusteeship model of Mahatma Gandhi. Corporate accountability. Brahmacharya or celibacy, it helps in tackling the consumerism, addiction and lifestyle diseases, right? Apart from this, aparigraha, which means detachment, where you are avoiding any kind of excessive greed. Now this is leading further to sustainable living. Relevance, if you pick up Mahatma Gandhi's Mahavir's ahimsa, it is relevant with Mahatma Gandhi's philosophy of satyagraha, you can mention, right? You have seen that aparigraha, it aligns with United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, right? That Earth has for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. Okay. Satya and Aste, it directly opposes the corruption, scams, and fraud. If you are internally a self-motivated individual with lot of integrity, then definitely it is going to promote accountability in the public administration. Mental social well-being, it reduces the stress caused by overconsumption and the materialism. So it talks about the minimalistic form of life, encourages the mindfulness. truthfulness. Is it clear? And the last one over here, social harmony, when you follow the policy of non-violence and truth. Okay, leading to a pluralistic society. 5A. One who is devoted to one's duty. Now understand the question is duty. Your mind should immediately go to Immanuel Kant's deontological perspective, right? Duty based, or Bhagavad Gita. Analyze the statement with reference to sense of responsibility and personal fulfillment as a civil servant. So yes, Bhagavad Gita, it also talks about the Nishkam Karma. Being a civil servant, you don't have to be attached, but you have to do a duty because it's inherently good in itself, right? Because action without, because it is a categorical imperative. It is a universal obligation to do your duty without any greed. The fulfillment of duty must be done like that. So constitutional mandate, you have to uphold the constitutional morality and the preamble. There is administrative responsibility, that implementation of the schemes has to be done in fair manner and in justiciable manner. There's a moral responsibility that you have to protect the right of the vulnerable sections. Apart from this, impartiality and integrity beyond your self-interest. You have to serve the public. This classic example you can see during the time of TN session in 1990s. There was a lot of booth capturing. Okay, there was a lot of criminalization of elections and politics. So what he did, he brought in the moral code of conduct at that time with fearless devotion to his electoral duty as a chief election commissioner. Okay, in terms of personal fulfillment, inner satisfaction, duty has to be performed with integrity. It brings the peace of mind. The duty has to be for duty's sake. Self-actualization. When I'll be taking the class on ethics and public administration. I'll be discussing the Maslow's hierarchy. In that, there are various stages or needs of a human. There is pehle roti kapda makan, right? Then there are certain physical needs. Then there are certain biological needs. Uske baad, after the 5 segments, okay, the 5th one over here is social needs, and then is your self-actualization stage. It is a stage. For example, you can say Ratan Tata has crossed all the stage. He did cross all the stage, and he is sitting peacefully on the beach playing his violin. Self-actualized. Been there, done that, right? Recognition and legacy. Devotion to duty, okay? This creates the lasting effect. Respect and effect also, yes. Because, see, as human beings, we all know the truth. If we lie, we know that. If we are honest, we know that. Okay, you don't have to pretend things to the world. The whole point is this. हर किसी को अपना सच पता होता है कि मैं कितने पानी में हूँ. So as a bureaucrat, when you are doing your duty, you will have that sense of personal fulfillment, which nobody can take away from you. Okay, so example over here, which I have picked up is E. Sridharan again, who is known as the Metro Man. He dedicated himself to the duty of building a very efficient transport system, Delhi Metro Rail Corporation. Okay, this shows his commitment to his duty. Relevance, if somebody is so duty bound, this will, in the time of corruption, nepotism and declining trust in the institution, the devotion of duty is going to restore the credibility in the governance. Okay, apart from this, I think you had to mention about Kant or Bhagavad Gita here. This is the key word which had to be put in the answer. Let's quickly see the 5th B. To achieve holistic development goal, a civil servant acts as enabler and active facilitator of growth rather than a regulator. Okay, there's an enabler, there's a regulator, and there's a facilitator. What specific measures will you suggest to achieve the goal? So, I have just discussed the traditional role of the bureaucrat was just to enforce a rule of law, right? There was a line chain of hierarchy. Okay, there was in trained capacity. So that was a traditional rule. There was this my baap culture which was already going on. He was acting as a regulator. कि काम सही से हो रहा है नहीं हो रहा है. But in today's time, Also, second administrative reform in its fourth report on ethics and governance specifically mentions about the citizen-centric governance, where the implementation of RTI, right? The implementation of e-governance, this is bridging the divide, this is bringing the people more to the democratic form of governance. Okay, specific measures for enabling the role, we can see here citizen-centric governance. You can mention here Sevottam model mentioned in second ARC. Okay, use of ICT, e-governance, grievance redressal portals. Another thing, participatory decision making. Okay, where you're involving the local communities in the watershed management under Manrega. This is another example, right? Because in democracy, debate and discussion is very essential, including the dissent is essential part of the democracy. Even the person at a very grassroots level has to be included in the decision making. Only then it will lead to ethical good governance. Okay, capacity building and empowerment of the citizen instead of imposing. Okay, what is their Skill India mission, where officers they facilitate the training under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Apart from this, promoting innovation and flexibility, we have seen Armstrong aim in one paper try to include different answers. Okay, he mobilized the communities to build a road without the government funds. Another thing, transparency and accountability. We have seen in social audits of Andhra Pradesh. Okay, or you can write about Jan Sunwai of Rajasthan, which led to passage of right to information act. देखो all these keywords are in your syllabus, but अब वैसे ही इसको कैसे use करना है, they were never going to ask you the direct question. In between the questions, you have to read between the lines. Okay, ethical leadership and value-based approach. Okay, there's a balance between strict regulation and laxity. So during pandemic, officers they balanced the enforcement of lockdowns with facilitation of the essential services, right? Ration, pani, basic life was going on. Apart from this, they work as a bridge between the government, private sector, and the civil society. So you can say that overall, it is not just being a regulator, rather somebody who is enhancing the people's choices. ये ऑप्शन है, आप ये कर सकते हैं, rather than आपको यही करना है, गवर्नमेंट ये स्कीम लेके आ रही है, आपको इसमें साइन इन करना है, नहीं. Instead, it should be like, these are the scheme for your welfare, this will lead to better convenience, you should or you may do this, and then you create awareness about that program. Okay, so very quickly let's see 6A. very balancedly they have asked the question. देखो इसमें एक भी क्वेश्चन डायरेक्टली इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस में नहीं है, बट 3A में हमने देखा था, राइट, वेयर देयर वाज अ कोट ऑफ त्रिवुरर. 3B में एटीट्यूड का क्वेश्चन हमने देखा. दिस इज हाउ दे आर आस्किंग द applied based ethics now. It is said that for ethical work culture, now work culture is also a part of your syllabus, right? It is said that in the work culture there should be balance of the three gunas. The rajogun is your luxury, the tamas is your evilish, okay, and the satogun is of ultimate purity. So ethical work culture, there must be code of ethics in place for every organization to ensure a value based and compliance based work culture. Now understand that code of ethics and code of conduct, this has been given in your syllabus. Code of ethics is the aspirational document, okay, which mentions that this is right and this is wrong. It gives you certain values, just say integrity, selflessness, leadership, honesty, probity, okay, compassion, tolerance. But it is not a written document. Code of conduct is a written document of do's and don'ts. Okay, in that, for example, All India Civil Service Conduct Rules 1964, that has been mentioned. So now it is talking that every organization needs to have this aspirational document of value system. What suitable measures would you adopt in your work culture? So question from ethics in public administration, you have to mention about Chanakya. He has given a concept of Yogasima, which is the welfare state. In the welfare of his subject lies the welfare of the king. It is the king's dharma to secure such welfare. Okay, so again, code of ethics, these are the broad principles which are just mentioned. And over here, how you are going to have the measures to ensure the value-based work culture. First, ethical leadership. Senior officers, they must demonstrate integrity and fairness in their decision making. This we have seen in the case of E. Sridharan. Second, capacity building and ethical training. Again, I'll write down here. You can write this Mission Karma Yogi, which government has brought recently. It will encourage the employees to internalize the value rather than just follow the rules. Apart from this, effective usage of technology for e-office, institutionalizing transparency and accountability. RTI compliance is there. Reward and recognition system, integrity awards. Again, second ARC has mentioned about this. Okay? Whistleblower protection and grievance redressal, where you can report the misconduct fearlessly. And what are the measures? There had to be clear rules and standard operating procedures. This I have mentioned, Civil Service Conduct Rules 1964. Second ARC, it specifically mentions about comprehensive public service bill. Okay, and in this bill, it has been mentioned that this is your value system. There has to be some specific ethical standards, and there has to be specific code of conduct in every organization. Is it clear? So this keyword you had to mention in context of the civil servant and the governance. Apart from this, I think let's very quickly get into the last question over here. India is emerging economic power of the world as it has recently secured the status of fourth largest economy as per IMF projection. However, it has been observed that in some sectors, allocation of funds. Now, the question over here is from utilization of fund, and this is a part of probity in governance. Again, this is a topic of in your syllabus. Okay, they are either underutilized or misutilized. What specific measures would you recommend for ensuring accountability in this regard to stop the leakages and gaining the status of third largest economy in the world in the near future? Okay, so this is the topic which has been mentioned, utilization of public funds. Now understand that there can be certain institutional measures. आपको external accountability measures भी लिखने हैं, but what is more essential is your internal accountability measures. Okay, the first one over here is strengthen your CAGS audit, real-time auditing using of technology, AI-based anomaly detection. First of all, social audit mechanism in schemes like Manrega, we have seen in Jan Sunwai, to enhance the people's oversight, empowering the Lokpal and Lok Ayukt for probing the fund misuse at the state. Another thing over here, technology intervention. Eliminate the leakages and the middlemen in the direct benefit transfer. Apart from this, blockchain-based tracking of the funds for transparency. You can, yes, have geotagging of the assets, but understand इंडिया में हर चीज का हैक या तोड़ पहले ही निकाल देते हैं. ठीक है, so these are just external measure. What is required, this paper is talking about, this is just administrative part, but the demand of the question over here is that if each person has that internalization of value system, that I have to be honest, I have to utilize the public funds only for the public services. Understand, there was Sir Shri Vishveshwarya, he used to lit the lamp given by the government only for government purposes, but for his personal usage he used to use another lamp. Now this is probity in governance, where financial integrity is intact. Okay, so another thing over here is administrative measures, outcome-based budgeting, performance-linked incentives, and capacity building. People-centric measures like right to information. People can question uh, why the funds are not there, whom the funds have been delivered, right? But write in this answer first the definition of probity and ethical value training with internalization of the ethics in the person himself will only lead to financial integrity. Understand? So what is required? A whole of government approach is required where citizen is equally participating, leading to the conception of Suraj or ethical good governance. Is it clear? This is the section A of the paper, and another session I'll be taking up with the section B. Thank you. Like, do share, do subscribe so that I can bring in more such content for you.